All right, what's going on, folks? Welcome to another episode of the Adventure One podcast. I am sitting here with Daniel. We are in our West Texas deer camp drinking a beer. What's up, dude?
Man, it's been a fun day, and this is actually, like I mentioned to the guy that got us into this place, this is nicer than my first college apartment. we're actually sitting in a camper, I guess is what you call it, with a couple of bunk beds and master bed and full suite of cooking stuff. And yeah, it's a nice little place, nice and cozy and warm. Outside it's about 20 degrees, so in here anything feels great.
Yeah, I originally, like, when we planned this, I was originally just imagining, okay, winter camp stuff, pack up warm gear. And you said there's a trailer, and so I imagined just kind of like a hull of somebody's old burnt-out deer camp.
Yep.
Something rough.
Like the one that we explored earlier today.
Yeah, we found a broken one, and it's like and we were even talking, like, yeah, it's probably like how many, like, broken-down trailers are there in America that have, like, a box of shotgun shells.
Which we found.
And an old, like, ratty teddy bear.
Which we also found.
Kind of creepy.
A little bit creepy.
Like,
and a dog bowl. Which kind of brought it all together.
Yeah, like, it's probably pretty common, but that's kind of what I expected. And so I brought the heater, I brought my 20-degree sleeping bag, and then this camper ends up being really nice. Like,
it's quite nice.
There's a microwave in here.
Yeah.
And to the point that even, like, for cooking our meals, I went to the grocery store and I bought one of those microwavable, like, steam in the bag, sack of veggie type of deals. And then I thought we were going to be cooking over a campfire, so I immediately dumped that out, wrapped it in aluminum foil, like double layered it up. And then I come here, I'm like, oh, there's a microwave. Should have just left it in the bag.
We now have to take it out of the tin foil to make it work.
Yeah. But, so big picture here. It is the last weekend of Texas deer season. Daniel secured permission on a place that neither one of us have ever been to. And so that's why it was kind of an exciting opportunity to just say, hey, we have no idea what's out there. We think there are deer that are out there just based on that it's a 5-deer county, so legally you can shoot whatever, which generally means there's a lot. But we don't know. It's not a huge property. It's way out west. Oh, by the way, there's this weird, random, huge snowstorm coming through West Texas. Let's try it anyway.
Yeah, man.
So this is kind of our last hurrah for deer season.
Yeah, and man, that snowstorm, it really kind of threw us by surprise. So we were planning on going out the weekend of Christmas, but it's my son's birthday, and so we're like, all right, that's not going to work. So let's go out the weekend after New Year's. And so we were actually going to leave on Friday, which was January 1st, come down, and we start looking at the weather. And in Dallas, it's probably, I don't know, 40 or 50 degrees, pretty cold.
It rained all day Thursday and all day Friday, and the temperature was dropping the whole time, but it never really froze. Yeah.
And we're down in this place called, depending on who you are, it's either Iran or Iraran. It's Iran with 2 A's. And we're looking at it going, man, it's showing that it's going to get in the 20s. And so my friend, he owns an oil and gas company, and he's got this land out here he bought. And I guess all the wells out here are actually water wells that they pump water back into the ground. And he's got a couple of oil wells around the area within probably a 30-mile radius. And this kind of feeds the water in, is what I understand. But he bought this plot of land to do that, and it's actually in, when we rolled in, it was kind of cool. It's like in a deer designated area. It's like a deer zone.
Yeah, I think it was like a collection of. I imagine it was originally a hunting club, and then they divvied up the properties. Like, it has that feel to it because there's one huge high fence ranch, and then a lot of little ranchettes that are all about 100 acres that are all on the same road, same access, and it's a hunting community, I guess. So
we didn't really know what to expect. My buddy's like, hey, you guys can go down there, do whatever you want. There's a trailer there, treat it as your own. Really, really cool setup that he's like, hey, do whatever you want. Hasn't been hunted in the couple of years that he's owned it. So we came down with literally zero expectation. I mean, our thought was, hey, let's go scout it out, see if there's enough, area to actually put up maybe some feeders and some blinds eventually and get it ready for next year. The other cool thing about it was this is a mule deer county. Yeah. And so we were like, all right, so if we can get this set up, then maybe next year for mule deer season, we could actually look at some mule deer, because that's kind of, it's not an exotic, but it's kind of an exotic to us.
Yeah, I mean, if you go out to El Paso, like, there are a decent number of mule deer around there, but they don't have any whitetails.
Yep.
Whereas this, I guess they call it Trans-Pecos region, There are just a couple counties that have both seasons and notable quantities of both. It's kind of like Colorado or Montana in that regard, that you can find both in the same area. Now, I don't know. We haven't seen a muley on this property, no. Spoiler alert. But I think just based on the terrain, if you were to be, it looks like we're in Nevada.
Yeah,
and
totally.
If you were to look at this terrain, you would say that's mule deer habitat.
Yeah,
it's just white-tailed deer just dominate Texas.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Our hope is that we can leave some cameras out here, learn what's out here, and maybe there's some muleys.
Yeah. Well, so giving you kind of the setup of the terrain. So when we were driving in, we're going southwest from Dallas. And so as we're driving in, we get about 3 hours outside of Dallas, and we start seeing, okay, there's a lot more little shrubbery, mesquites and cedars. And probably about an hour and a half outside the property, we're looking at each other going, man, I hope it doesn't look like this. And it's like flat land you can see 1,000 yards in and a couple little bushes. And I'm like, I don't think it's like that. We both looked at the satellite images on Onyx. It seemed like there was more stuff. And so we're getting down, and we're about 30 minutes from the property. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good now. There's a lot of decent-sized cedars. They're pretty small, but they're still decent size. A lot of decent-sized mesquites, and it's brushy looking, which is a great place for deer to kind of bed down and hide. And we got to the property. We rolled in. It's snow-covered. Like, there's snow everywhere. Yeah. We didn't finish that part of it, but it snowed a ton down here. We actually delayed our trip by a day because there's so much snow and ice.
Alpine and Fort Stockton, so just west of here, they were expecting a foot of snow.
Yeah.
I think they easily got 6 inches
totally.
Here.
Yeah. And so we actually, let me back up before I tell you about the terrain. So we were going to leave on January 1st in the morning, really early, try to get down here for an evening hunt. We started talking. We're like, you know what? It's supposed to snow all the way until about 2 in the morning on January 1st. Then it's going to freeze. So let's play it by ear.
Yeah, it's supposed to get down to 19 that night. Right. So like hard freeze.
So we're like, all right, maybe at 12 or 1 in the afternoon we'll leave, right? And maybe get down there and get ready for a morning hunt. Well, it was still like 25. So we just said, hey, you know what? We're going to just call it. We're going to leave the next morning. We're not going to leave early. We're going to leave about 7. That way, when we get there about noon or 1, it's kind of high noon. Everything is melted out. And so there's a guy down here who helps on the pumps. And I was texting with him, and he's like, yeah, you don't want to come down right now. It's 16 degrees. And we're like, okay, we're not going to do that. So we ended up leaving on Saturday morning, January 2nd, coming down. And then we saw the terrain. So we get to the property, and we're looking, we're like, this is great. It's about 2 miles back past the road we were driving on, 190. And so we get into the property, and we're driving back. I'm like, man, this seems like it's pretty cool. There's snow covered everywhere. It looks like great, just kind of terrain. We're starting to see tracks everywhere. And we roll up on the place, and we see this.
Well, and we saw a lot of dead deer on the highway rolling up, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always like every time you see a deer on the highway, you're like, oh, that one bit it. That sucks. But it's still like a good idea. Like, it means they're here. If they're getting hit by our cars, they're here.
Yeah. So we rolled up, saw the camper. We're like, okay, that looks like it's doable. The guy that runs the pumps wasn't here yet. He was going to let us into the camper. So we kind of parked the truck, and actually about 10 minutes after we parked the truck, there's like this little mesa up to the east, and we're looking, and all of a sudden we saw 2 deer run up this mesa and kind of skyline.
And the top of that mesa is probably, what do you think, 100 foot above us?
Yeah, probably about that.
Because I looked on Onyx, and it said that was, I think, 29. It was just shy of 3,000.
Yeah. So 2 deer run up there, and then they kind of skyline, they go over the skyline, and then another deer follows them. So we're like, man, this is great. We're here 10 minutes. We've seen 3 deer, right?
Yeah.
And so that
hopefully we didn't blow out the only 3 deer on the place.
Exactly. Well, and they were probably, I think it's probably 300 yards up there.
Yeah.
Right. And we had our rifles out, but like not really. We weren't prepared to take a shot, and they weren't stopping. We
were doing that, bro. Like, man, I coulda.
Bro, I would have shot that thing in the head from here. So we ended up getting all our gear, and it was actually kind of nice out. It was probably 45, 50. It's probably 45.
Yeah.
So we put kind of like light cold gear on, put our packs on. We're like, all right, we're going to hike up that mesa, and we're going to go up to the top and just kind of scout and just see what we can see. So we end up we walk around a little bit. We're making sure we're in the property lines. We get up to the top. And by the way, just like as a side note, I'm really out of shape, I've realized.
Yeah, that no shape November got to me.
Oh my gosh, dude, it killed me. It totally killed me.
The holidays were bad.
The good thing is we're in January, 2020's behind us. So now I've got a new goal.
Yeah.
Be able to hike up a mesa without feeling like my legs are going to fall off.
Yep.
So we get up there, we're looking around. There's like this weird, it almost looked like a bow stand. Right? With like a chair in it.
Little tripod that up here, like out west where it's so windy and stuff, it was like chained down to the earth in three different directions. And it still looks like it got thrashed.
Well, the funny thing is it's on top of this mesa and there's probably, I don't know, maybe 100 yards from the cliffs on the mesa to the back of the property.
Yeah.
So it's like you're really not giving yourself a lot of room to shoot something up here. But it was up there.
I just wouldn't want to be the dude who schlepped that thing all the way up to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, so this place, again, it hasn't been hunted in a couple of years since my buddy bought it for more oil and gas stuff. But it used to be a deer camp. There was a couple of feeders and a couple of blinds set up previously. And this was another one of them. So obviously people had been hunting out here, but it hasn't been touched in a while.
Yeah.
So we get up there, we start glassing. The guy's texting me, the guy that's going to come in and let us in the cabin or into the camper. And he's like, hey, I'll be in there in about 40 minutes. Like, all right, cool. So we go to like this little cliff area and I'll let you kind of talk through what we were thinking about when we were glassing.
Yeah. And this was, so I've done a little bit of Western hunting. You haven't really done much. And so I'm like, dude, the best way for us to like learn what's out here, it's kind of tedious, a little bit boring, but just get as high as we can and then just pull out our chairs and pull out our binos. I even had a spotting scope. We didn't bust that out because I don't think we need it for here. With binos, you can still see stuff a mile away. But just get out and glass and see what you can see. And then we were there just looking around, looking at some of these drainages. And just to give you an idea of the terrain, so very rocky. As you mentioned, it's kind of scrub mesquite, scrub cedars. I would say on average, there's a lot of like 6-footers out there. And then every once in a while, there's like a 12 or 15 footer out there. So it's not like big trees, but it's very thick.
Yep.
And it's kind of that irony of you can see everything, but you can't really see anything.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it tough. But
see what's right in front of you, and that's about it.
Yeah, or you get the big picture. You see the forest, but it's hard to see a deer exactly where and how it's moving. But we were sitting up there for a little while. We were looking around, and there were a couple times I saw a spot that I would spend probably 30 seconds to a minute staring at the same spot, thinking maybe I saw something. And then you were very excited when you're like, dude, I got one. You had a great spot on a deer that was standing up.
Broadside to us.
Yeah.
Which was amazing.
And we ranged it at, what was it?
615 or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I wish I had my Creedmoor. Maybe I would have tried to take a shot.
Yeah. Probably
not.
That's pushing it, but
if it was a pig, no doubt about it. Headshot all day.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad I didn't have like a long range precision. Oh, I mean, a 270 with a 10 power scope is still a long range precision weapon, sure. But something that was really like
that I knew I could hit an 8-inch plate at 600.
Yeah. It was good that we weren't tempted.
Probably. Well, and the other thing too is it was really windy. So like, let's just say that we were Herculean up there and we had our long range rifles. Like, the reality is, even in perfect conditions, it'd be tough to hit it. But with the wind, especially going high to low, that'd have been a little tough.
Yeah. Yeah, even that angle, I don't think we've shot off that much of an angle on anything.
Right.
But anyway, you saw it. We watched that deer bed down, and we're like, okay, remember where that happened.
The way we remembered is so we mentioned this earlier, there's another old camper.
Yeah,
it's broken down, and it was there. My buddy had told me that when he bought the place, it was already there. It's an old school one, and so I'm looking at the camper, and this is, I don't know if it's creepy or like just cool, but like just to the left of it, there's like a open from the top freezer. Right? What do you call it?
Yeah, I thought it was like a toolbox or a job box, but it's like a chest freezer.
It's a chest freezer. There we go. It's a red chest freezer, and I'm looking at it
out there,
and it like you're 550 yards away. You're like, yeah, that looks like a tool chest or like a small cooler. And so I'm looking at it, and then I look left. I'm like, Pliny, it's about 100 yards to the left of that, and that's where we found it. So when we got back down, and by the way, we found a blind that was working, a tripod.
Yeah,
not a tripod. Sorry, a box blind. There was called sniper's tower or something like that. That's what it had on the door. Did you see that?
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, it says sniper's tower on the door. Which
Gotcha.
is cool.
Yeah, it's whoever built that thing, like, set it all up, like, good ladder. It's an octagon design, which...
It's probably, 12 feet off the ground?
12, at least 12, maybe 15.
So we saw that one. Then we found the other one that was on its side, knocked over. And so we're just kind of looking for stuff that we knew was probably there, right? And so looking for landmarks, not a huge property.
Landmines?
Yeah, we're looking for those too. This used to be an old World War II plot.
We're in Iran, damn it.
Exactly. So at that time, the guy, we see him coming in on the road because he's driving his truck, and we're like, all right, we should probably head down. We kind of know where she is. She's about 100 yards, that doe we thought we saw. She's about 100 yards off to the left of those trailers we saw. So we start heading down to meet this guy.
And we're like, it's hot and sunny and windy. That deer's bedded down.
And it's probably 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that deer's going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
No urgency.
Yep. So we end up heading down, and so the guy meets us down by the pumps. There's like 3 big water. They're not water towers. They're like just
big
water
tanks,
cylinder tanks. So he's down there flipping a pump switch, and really nice guy. We introduced ourselves to him. I had been texting with him, and he's like, "Hey, let me get you in the camper." He set us all up. Really cool guy. So we end up getting set up. We bring all our stuff in, and then we're like, "Hey, what do we want to do for a hunt tonight?" Right? So he ends up leaving, and we're like, well, we saw some tracks over by. So there's this little road that drive. It's not a real road. It's like a property road, right, that people drive on that goes into this guy's property. So we saw some tracks crossing there when we were driving in, and then we saw this other blind. So we're like, all right, well, let's go check out the blind. So we go and we look at the blind, and then we're like, hey, let's go, while we have time, see if we can get a stalk on that deer that we saw.
And I'm like, it's early enough that we can kind of do this. If we get it, awesome. If we blow it up, it sucks, but it's early enough that I don't think it really messes up our evening sit.
Yep. So we end up going to the blind. We look at it, we're like, this is kind of cool. It's a little old, but it's still fully functional. I found it interesting that the feeder, which is not functional, was 165 yards away from the blind. Which
now kind of makes more sense, like the fact that the guy would name it the Sniper's Roost or whatever it was called.
Yeah. So, by the way, I'm really hung up on this. Like, you want to put a feeder 100 yards away? Totally makes sense. You want to put it 150? You got a long shot, but I get it. But like 165? Like, it's just a weird distance. And especially there where you could have put it at any distance, but you're like, yeah, 165. That's the number I want to put it at. Kind of weird. So we end up going and looking at that.
It's probably somebody who randomly sights in his rifle at 165 because of some ballistic thing on his specific gun.
Exactly. The funny thing is, like, there's no shooting lane there anymore.
No, yeah, all the cedars have grown up. Yeah.
So it's been a while since this place has been touched, and what we eventually came to find out is we think that we're in between 2 hunting plots where there are feeders, and this is probably where a few deer bed down and others just cross through when they're going from feeder to feeder.
No man's land.
No man's land. So we end up going and we're looking for this deer, and so we go all the way around. We kind of circle way around the old camper that we saw. And we get all the way up on that kind of chest, that freezer chest, and I think I even made the comment, I'm like, "Hey, Pliny, you need a freezer?" And it's funny because there was actually ice in it from all the snow and ice that had melted in there. So we're I don't know, what do you think? We're 50 yards from where we saw that deer.
We're in like the danger close where it's like we're starting to. I mean, obviously we looped around, approached from downwind. I think we generally did everything right, stayed in cover. But now we're kind of getting into the area where, like, you can make a noise and blow it all up really quick.
And we haven't seen any, like, we stop every couple, like, minute or so, and we're glassing, and we're just not seeing it.
And we didn't see, like, we thought, I thought at least, that I was very confident about where that deer was, and I wasn't seeing it there.
Right.
And so either it got up, munched around, browsed for 10 minutes, and then laid down somewhere very close, and we just didn't know where that was, or it had just left, and we didn't know.
Well, and the interesting thing, so for those of you that don't do a ton of hunting from longer distances, what I've noticed from this is up on a mesa, 615 yards away, versus 40 yards away looks very different.
Yeah.
Like the terrain looks like there was a wooden like boxy structure that we didn't even see when we were up glassing. And we're down there, we're like, do you remember seeing that? And how far was the tree line from that? And we're both like, I don't remember that.
Yeah, and even like so many landmarks where you're like, yeah, those 2 cedar trees, the one on the left.
Yeah.
And then you get down and you're like,
there's like 12 cedar trees
and
here.
I can't tell which one we thought was the left when it seems so obvious from, different angle.
So we get, I don't know, I'm going to guess we're 30 to 40 yards from this deer.
Yeah.
And it spooks. We hear, and then Pliny's like, oh, there it goes. He sees a whitetail running.
Yeah. I didn't get a good look at it. I just through the thick brush, I saw a whitetail.
Yeah. I didn't see anything. I was just like, oh, there
but
it goes.
We were, even when it ran off, we were for sure downwind of it. So it never winded us. It just, and also, so this whole time, we're crunching through snow. Like
hard, cracky
like
snow.
melting and refrozen snow.
Yeah.
And so it's every step, you're trying to walk as quietly as you can, but it's,
for those of you up in the Northeast, that's called corn snow.
oh, yeah.
It's like crunchy on the top, but nice and soft in the bottom.
See, based on my hunt this morning, I have a totally different definition of corn snow.
That's fair.
That's the Texas version of corn snow.
There's just a bunch of corn laying on top of snow. Yeah, exactly. So we end up backing out the same way we came in, just trying not to blow up the spot anymore. We're like, all right, so let's figure out where we want to hunt tonight, because it's probably 3:30 by now.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try to go ahead and do a sit. So we've got the blind, and we've got this road like that's coming into the property. So Pliny's like, hey, which one do you want to do? I'm like, I'll just sit in the blind. And rookie mistake on both of our part. It's 45 degrees, 50 degrees out, sun shining. We're hiking. We've got on, I had a base layer, but not a thick one, and pants, and a base layer on the top, and just a shirt and a hoodie, like a camo hoodie. I'm like, I'm good. So I go and sit in the blind. I think you had probably something similar.
I did the same thing. I've got like my 5'11" pants that I wear mostly just because I haven't been able to destroy them yet. They're very durable, but not very warm. And then just a long sleeve tee.
So we're like, all right, well, this is good enough. Let's just head out. Don't grab any hand warmers. Don't grab any jackets. Just kind of head to our spots. So I get up in the blind, and it's got, that one's an octagon, right?
Yeah.
So it's got basically 8 windows around it. So I open up, I think 6 or 7 of the windows, just so I can get a good view. There's a bunch of like oil and gas equipment on my right side, so we can't shoot that way. But on the left and behind me, it's totally fine. But there's a little bit of a breeze, and as soon as that sun goes down, I'm like, man, it got cold. Like,
yeah,
really cold. So I don't see anything. I'd thrown some corn out. I don't see anything. And then all of a sudden, like the sun goes down all the way. It's getting to be sunset, and I was cold, like really, really cold, and I had really thin gloves with me. So I'm just kind of hunkered down, like slowly moving my head because I just want to keep all my body heat in the center, and at the same time.
Yeah, so I was just out there just kind of sitting on the side of a road like I was hitchhiking or something. And just to clarify, so this is not a county road. This is not a public road. That's totally illegal to shoot over a road in Texas. But on a property, a private road, it's no different than a field or anything else. You can do whatever. So a private road, and we're the only ones on the property, so legal and safe. Sitting there, and honestly, with all these thick cedars, there was nothing special about this road other than that I could see. And so I'm like, okay, anything 0 to 300 yards in this 40-foot stretch, I'm going to see it for sure. So I sat there, and I just kind of pulled some sticks in front of me, not even really making a brush blind, but just kind of breaking up my shape a little bit. And I had my little camp chair that folds down real small, and so I ended up sitting on that, and it was kind of low, not super comfortable, definitely not warm. So I was sitting out there. My boots were literally in the snow, so I was getting pretty cold.
And there's probably still 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I'm wearing so the boots that I hike in a lot for hunting. I think they're Danner Pronghorns, super comfortable, great rugged hiking boots, but they're uninsulated. So yeah, I was getting pretty cold at that point. And I just was watching down that roadway, and I realized, like, if I see something, they're not used to any food, anything being here. So I could just see something dart across real quick and be gone. So I already
you did throw some corn out there.
Yeah, a little bit. And I wasn't even sure if I was throwing it in the right spot. I was just taking a guess. And my goal really, I knew I wasn't going to be attracting anything. And so like a lot of people were like, yeah, hunting over bait, blah, blah, blah. I knew at this point I wasn't going to attract anything that wasn't already going there.
Just stop it if it comes
Slow
through.
it down. Exactly. Yeah. So I realized it was still probably going to be a quick opportunity because they weren't used to eating there. So I had my rifle up on sticks with my lens cover off, just ready. And so sure enough, I was sitting there, and then I just was looking around, and then I saw a little deer pop out, and I'm like, okay, what is that? Okay, it's a little fawn. And then it trotted off. And then very close behind it, I'm like, oh, another little deer. I think it's a doe. And then I glassed it, and I'm like, no, I think it's actually a spike, but I can't tell. Yeah, it's a little spike. Okay. And then it trotted off. And each were there maybe 30 seconds, tops. And then they left. And then what was weird, they both came right to left. I feel like I had a weird deja vu moment because I looked up about 5 minutes later, and like the same thing happened again. But this time they both came out like, well, the fawn came out first and then the spike, and then they're standing there together. So they must have like circled around or crossed the road because they came from the right both times. And I doubt it had to have been the same deer.
It's so weird. Yeah, it had to have been.
But I don't know. Maybe the only thing I can think of is they crossed and I just didn't see it somehow. But I got a little bit of footage of them, but they were at, I think the closest they got to me was 177 yards and the farthest was 209. So I had my rifle up on them, just kind of being prepared. I never flicked my safety off, but I'm like, maybe there's a big buck right behind them. Yeah. I don't know, but get ready. And then I realized, I'm like, yeah, like I could make this shot, but I'm shooting at a deer. And we were talking about this earlier. Yep. I am very much a believer in the aim small, miss small. I like shooting at a neck or shooting at finding the elbow and shooting right above it, not being like, there's a deer, let me shoot at the deer. Hopefully I'll hit the deer.
Yeah.
That's just not a good premise for success, I don't think. Especially since I was on the south edge of this property where they could run about 30 yards, and then beyond that, they're going to be off the property. So no long tracking jobs here. Right. We need to drop them quick. So I saw them, and then we're in a little bit different of a tag situation. So I have one tag left, and it's an either tag, buck or doe. And then Daniel, you have a lot of tags left.
I have 4 left.
Yeah. And so I was very much of the mentality that I'm like, man, I have not shot a good buck this year. That's what I'm really after.
And my mentality is, if I see something,
if it's brown, it's down.
It's down. I need more. I've shot 1 deer this season. I need way more meat in my freezer, and so I'm approaching it like, hey, whatever I see that's legal, I'm taking a shot.
Yeah. So I had those in my crosshair, both of them, and then they walked off, and I was like, yeah, it's our first night here. I don't know what else is happening. I haven't sat in the other spot. I just don't know, and it's not something. Whereas you're really trying to just fill up your freezer with more deer meat. I've got a lot, and so I'm like, I'm going to pass right now. So We ended up coming back.
We watched a couple of movies, including Red Dawn, which was fantastic.
Yeah, we watched Red Dawn. What was it? And The Bucket List.
Yeah, man, that was a sad movie.
I know. Like it started out like it was interesting, and then it
got really sad.
Yeah,
made me really want to just go and hug my kids.
Yeah, and we stayed in the camper, cooked up some steaks and had some beers and just kind of hung out for a little bit. And then we kind of decided on the plan for the next morning. So we were going to swap spots.
Yep.
In talking about it, like I was kind of interested to get in that tower just to see what that was like.
It's cool.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to put something down so I could have more meat.
Yeah, and I realized like, well, the fact that those deer did that once and then we saw pretty solid trails, they're probably going to do that exact same thing again.
Yep.
So we swapped spots. And then maybe I had a little bit of a secret motive too as well. So I have one of those little buddy propane heaters.
And keep in mind, it got really cold the first night.
Yeah.
Really cold.
Yeah, way below freezing.
Like it got, I think outside when we were sleeping, it was 22 is the lowest, something like that, or 24.
Ooh, yeah. I remember for some reason I was thinking 27.
Maybe it was 27. It was in the 20s.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was cold out there. And I realized I'm like, I can go just like sit my butt down on a cold frozen road, or I could be in a box blind with a heater. That's an easy decision for me, and it happened to align with your hunting goals as well.
Great.
So,
you saw 2 deer? Oh, perfect! I'm in. I'm there all day.
So this morning went up to that blind, and it was cool. I mean, got to see the sunrise, and it was exactly what I explained earlier, where it's kind of the blessing and curse of you can see everything, but you can see nothing.
Yeah.
And so I sat down there, and I feel like I almost got eye fatigue because I was in my binos so much. Because so often when I'm hunting, I realize I'm looking around and I think I see movement, or I think I see a deer, or a lot of times I even do see a deer. And then I check it out with the binos to figure out exactly what I'm looking at. Here, you really just need to like break down every clump you see.
Yep. Because it could just be a bedded deer that's not moving a ton because it's so cold. Their head moves every minute or two.
Or even if you see something and then it moves 5 feet to the left, you'll never see it again.
Yep.
So,
well, speaking of which, when I saw that deer when we were glassing it, we lost it probably 3 or 4 times after that because it bedded down and only its head was showing.
Yeah, and we'd be like, oh, I got it in here.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough to find them out here for sure.
Yeah. So I did that sit. I didn't see anything. And then your morning.
So my morning, Pliny's like, yeah, I saw those deer from 170-ish to 210-ish. And so I've got a Savage Access 270 with
we're both 270 fanboys.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But it's got a Weaver 3x9. It came with the rifle that I bought 3 years ago. And so I feel very confident within 150 yards with that rifle. 200 yards, I shot it one time at 200 yards when we were at your place down in South Texas.
Just ringing a plate.
Ringing a 12-inch plate at 200. And I smoked it, but I've never really shot much there. So I was like, you know what? I want to give myself a little bit of an advantage. So I gave myself 10 yards. So I moved.
It's just like a penalty flag on the deer.
I got up there. I'm like, I'm an idiot. I should just stay where Pliny was.
Deglaev game, 10 yards.
Yeah, exactly.
To the hunter.
So I moved up 10 yards to this cedar tree, and I took the brush that Pliny had put, and I put a little brush blind there, threw some more corn, sat there all morning. I saw a couple of cottontail rabbits, and I'm like, man, this is going to be good.
And you confused me at first because you said whitetail.
I did.
Like I saw whitetail rabbits.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, they're like the jackalopes. So I saw some rabbits, I saw some birds, but no deer. And so I'm like, you know what? Beautiful day. It's getting warm. It was nice. I'm glad I had my big jacket I just bought. So, by the way, I have all my kind of mid-season stuff, and then this was really cold. I'm like, I'm going to go to Bass Pro Shop real quick and buy a really thick jacket. And it definitely paid off.
Daniel's number one hunting strategy is like have the majority of what I need, but then the day before, buy that one thing at Bass Pro or Shields.
Absolutely. And
I don't care how much it costs.
I don't care.
That one thing that I just thought of.
Yes.
Get it.
I need it. And by the way, usually that one thing is something to keep me warm. Because I am the biggest baby in cold weather. I hate cold weather. Like Laguna, that was great. I got sweating my ass off, but it was fantastic.
80 degrees the whole
it was
time.
Great. Yeah. So we end up coming in, and I was kind of looking around, so we're down in this place I ran. It's about 5.5 hours from Dallas. And, we're potentially going to have the opportunity to come down here next season, set up some feeders, and actually come hunt a few times. So I wanted to go into Iran proper, see if they have any good restaurants. Again, good is relative based on, small town Texas. But I found a pizza place on Google, so I'm like, let's go check it out. And Pliny's like, yeah, let's go. So we hop in the truck. Actually, first, what did we do first? We did something, didn't we?
We drove down the highway, found out they had a hospital.
No, first we went and explored that camper.
Yeah. And
then we found the other fallen down
stands.
Oh,
that's true. Yeah, and we measured it just in case we wanted to resurrect some stuff there.
So basically we walked around the property a little bit, looked at some stuff. Then we got in the truck, we drove, and then there's this place where there's like just a temporary stoplight.
Yeah.
And we stop, and then I'm gunning it through it afterwards, and it's one lane, and man, I felt like I hit the frost heaves out of hell. Like there's like holes in the road.
Yeah.
So we end up going into town, grab some pizza, we grab some more beer.
We're at the Iran Hospital Pizza Shop and Tire Center.
Oh, man. It was all in one. But what they did not have, they did not have fence posts.
Nope.
Or postal drivers.
Nope.
Which is what we needed because we wanted to put a camera on one.
Or cheap movies.
They didn't have those either.
Because they have a DVD player in this camper, but no TV signal.
They have 2 movies in here. We watched them both last
Yep.
night. So we basically said, well, we don't have any more movies, so we better kill something so we can clean it tonight.
Yeah. I think that's a good strategy. I think
it worked out.
Let's bookmark that one.
Yeah. So we end up driving back, and we're like, hey, it's probably about 1:15 when we got back. We're like, hey, let's take a nap till 2, wake up, go put out some cameras that we're going to put out, and then we'll get ready to hunt. So we lay down, and we did not get up at 2.
You're like, Pliny, it's 2.
Going back to bed.
Pliny, did you hear that? Yeah. It was all the ice sliding off the camper. Oh.
Man, that was loud.
Pliny, it's 3.
Pliny, it's 3:45. We should probably go.
But fortunately, we're like
100-yard walk.
Yeah. We're within range of our hunting spots.
Yeah. So we end up deciding I'm going to go hunt that little kind of road again, and Pliny's going to go back up to the sniper's nest.
Yep.
So I go out to the road. Actually, do you want to tell yours first?
I sat there. I had that heater up there, but didn't need to touch it because it had warmed up, and that whole stand kind of sat in the sun all afternoon. So I was pretty comfortable. I even took my hat and gloves off.
I did not have that experience.
I was sitting there. I was out of the wind, and just glassing a lot and trying not to get distracted, not to just kind of be lazy-eyed or distracted by my phone. And so I was really just glassing as much as possible. And I didn't really see anything the whole time. Lots of little birds at the end of the hunt. It was kind of cool that it was like, I don't know, God redeemed the cold and dry air with a beautiful sunset. Yeah. And I got some pictures of that. Just cool West Texas sunsets. At one point I did see something. I heard a shot, so I'll just allude to it that way. And when I heard the shot, I saw a deer get up and kind of bolt through the brush real quick, and I just kind of saw like ears. Okay, that's the back of a deer. Okay, where'd it go?
And that was probably, you said it was probably 150, 200 yards out?
Probably closer to 200. Yeah.
That was by the north side of the property.
Yeah, so like it was at a place where if I was steady and if it was standing out in the open, totally would have been in range. But I literally just saw like ears and kind of the shape of a deer bolting through the cedars, and then I lost it. So that was my evening. Not much happening.
Yeah, so I got out to this spot on the road, and so again, I'd hunted there in the morning. I'd moved up about 10 yards, and then I just kind of in my mind decided, hey, I'm going to make an aggressive play here. And so I'm still sitting about 170 yards from probably 170 to 200 yards from where Pliny had seen those 2 deer the night before. And again, right now I've got one tag that I've used this season. It's the last day of deer season and before the extended season, but it's the last day of regular deer season. I'm like, look, if I see anything that's legal, which out here everything is, I'm putting it down because I want to get more meat in the cooler. My kids love venison.
Which is so cool, by the way.
It is so cool. They love it. So my goal was just, hey, I want to get some meat in the freezer. So I went up, I spread some corn, and I'm looking for, as I'm walking up about 150 yards, I'm looking for areas where I could potentially put my chair. And, I'm like, I can't be 200 yards back. I just don't feel comfortable taking that shot with this rifle that I haven't taken before. So I start walking up, and I see a spot about 100 yards from where Pliny had seen the deer the night before. So I moved up about 75, 80 yards. And I'm like, yeah, this could work out well. So I'm brushed in behind. I'm actually sitting in front of a cedar tree. And then I grabbed a bunch of old mesquite branches. And this is so crazy. I stuck a mesquite thorn into my nail. Not like through the top of my finger, but like in the middle of my fingernail, it stuck into the nail and broke off inside of like the flesh inside.
Yeah, you've whined about that like 4 times.
It is super uncomfortable, like very uncomfortable. There's like a thorn in my nail that broke off in my skin. So anyway, I'm moving all these in. I build this brush blind, and I'm sitting there in the back of my head going, man, I'm either the smartest guy here or I'm a moron because I have corn behind me. I have corn in front of me that I've just kind of sprinkled, right? Just to see what comes out. There's deer trails behind me. There's deer trails in front of me. I'm like, I'm going to be like swivel chair in my head all day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look where I know that they were the night before. And if they come out, I'm going to shoot them. So I'm sitting there.
Well, and just moving up like that, I mean, it's an aggressive move, but ultimately I think it just points to like play on your most recent information.
Absolutely. 100%.
If you're playing on your most recent information, it's probably a good call.
And there's a little road that went to that old camper that we drove by when we were going to get pizza. And that road connects to the other property, and there's a fence there or like a little gate. But we saw a bunch of tracks on that.
And when we say a road, we like, because everything's covered in snow, we just mostly mean like a little gap where there are no trees.
Like you could probably fit a 4-wheeler through.
Yeah.
It's not like I wouldn't drive my truck through there. Put it that way. Your truck, you probably would.
Well, let's go.
So I'm about 100 yards from that, and I'm sitting there. And so here's the thing I love about hunting is, Pliny and I both work in relatively stressful jobs, and we have to deal with a lot of people. We live in the city. And what I love about hunting is you kind of get away from all that, right?
Yep.
You get out in the country, you get to watch the sunrise and the sunset. And for me, it's a time to just spend time in my thoughts, spend time with God, pray, just be thankful for what I have. So I'm sitting there going, man, I'm always not frustrated, but I'm always a little anxious before I shoot something. Or maybe not, right? We've been hunting a couple times this year where both Pliny and I have zeroed. And so I'm sitting there like, you know what? If I don't get anything, that's fine. Like this is beautiful. The goal was not to come out and shoot something. The goal was to come out and find out what we know about this place. And if I shoot something, if I shoot, and then boom, all of a sudden I look up and that little, what I thought was a big doe, but it ended up being a spike, walks out. And I already, like Pliny said, actually, let me tell a story real quick before I tell what happened. So as we're driving back from pizza, again, we're about 30 yards from the property line. Pliny's like, hey, when you shoot them, try to shoot them in the high shoulder to drop them right there so they don't run on the other property because there's no fence to the other property.
And normally I would almost always advocate the double lung shot just because it's like if you're off 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, it's still good. And it's very predictable that they're going to run 40, 50 yards and drop.
Yep.
But the high shoulder shot, it just has a higher odds. What I don't like about it is you do often blow up at least one of the shoulders. And so you lose some meat. Like it's almost guaranteed that you're going to lose some meat. So if you're wide open, I wouldn't normally advocate for that just because I don't like wasting any meat. But if you're in a situation like this where you just need to drop them, blow right through that scapula and
drop them.
They're
immobilized.
It's still a lung shot ultimately, but I think the shock factor hits their spine a little bit and their shoulders broken, so they're not going to get up and run off.
Yeah. So one thing about me, if you guys listen to any podcasts that I'm on and you hear me shooting an animal, I don't take a long time to take my shot.
No.
Like within seeing an animal, I think the longest I've ever waited is probably 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I get on them. If I see my opening, I take the shot.
Yep.
So I see this, and I'm literally sitting there talking to God about my family and all this. And I look up and it was 100.3 yards away because I ranged it afterwards. I see this deer coming out from the right side of the road, and the deer like just barely made it fully out of the cover. And I had my rifle on him. I took the shot, high shoulder, and he dropped right there.
And from my tower, not too far away, but I hear,
yeah.
And that distinctive when you hear the shot that just versus when you hear
yeah.
Like when it ends, you're like, oh,
got him,
hit something.
Yeah. So he didn't move. He literally like it's probably the fastest deer I've ever seen die. Like he dropped and then his legs twitched for maybe 10, 20 seconds and that was it. Right.
Yeah, done.
And so I'm texting Pliny. I'm like, got one, smoked him, pumped. I thought it was a doe because it looked like a doe. And then I got my binos out and I'm like, no, I can see some little nubs on him. I think it's a nubbin buck.
And in some situations, that's a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to be very sure. But in this situation,
yeah,
you had tags for either.
Yep.
It's the last day of season.
Yep.
Yeah, like
so we
didn't change anything.
So my mentality approaching this hunt was very different than most. So if we're on a lease or like a property where it's being managed somewhat, you're really careful about what you shoot. This hunt was, hey, never been hunted in 4 or 5 years. I'm treating it like a public land hunt. where whatever's legal, either I shoot it or it won't be there the next time.
Yep.
Because we may never come back here.
Yep.
Right. And my buddy that owns the property is like, hey man, whatever you want to shoot, as long as it's legal, go for it. So my thought was, I'm going to take a shot at something, put meat in my cooler. Right. So this little nubbin buck comes out. He was probably 90 pounds. He was still decent size.
Yeah.
I dropped him. I'm super excited. I kind of just waited because that was early. Like sunset's at 5:56, and this was at like
4:40.
4:40.
Yeah,
like it was early, and I'm pumped. One thing about me with hunting, I'm a momentum hunter, so I'd rather shoot something earlier because it just gets that monkey off my back.
A momentum hunter.
It's a real thing. I'm telling you. I just invented it, and it's real. So I'm sitting there super excited. I get out, take a couple of pictures of this little sniper's hide I had made, which I thought was actually pretty cool. I'll show you some pictures, but I think I brushed it in pretty well. I was pretty excited about it. And then I sit back down. I text Pliny. I'm like, hey, I'm going to wait to see if that other deer that you saw last night comes out. And he's like, cool. So I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes later, that other deer comes out. It's a little fawn.
Wondering where his brother's at.
And so, again, with my goal for this weekend, it was, if it's legal, I'm going to shoot it. So I saw this fawn come out, and, it's a fawn, but it's January now, right? So it's decent size. It's probably, 60, 70 pounds, somewhere in there?
Over 60, I think, from picking it up, yeah.
So it's not big, but I put my scope on it, and I actually thought there's so many thoughts that went through my head in about a 20-second span. I'm like, all right, so first of all, I told myself coming into this hunting trip, if I see something like that, I'm going to shoot it, right? Then secondly, this is kind of a weird thought, but I'm like, well, I just killed her brother. So she's kind of running solo now.
Yeah.
Right? And I had all these kind of thoughts going into my head. And so I've got that Savage Access. It's got I guess call it a dual trigger. It's kind of like a Glock where you've got in between the trigger, you've got like the safety trigger part of it.
A paddle trigger. It's the Accu trigger if you're familiar with the Savage lingo. Yeah.
So I've got the Accu trigger suppressed. My safety's off. I've got my sights right on her. And I just said, you know what? I came here for meat. I'm going to go home with meat. I took the shot. Really weird. Usually when you shoot a deer, they kind of do a mule kick. This deer's tail was straight up, and she jumped, 5 feet in the air, like straight up. And I'm like, man, did all that kind of mind game for the last 20 seconds make me like miss the shot? Like I thought I actually missed her. And so probably about 5 minutes later, I text Pliny and say, hey, I shot the other one. And probably like 5 minutes later, I'm like, I'm just going to kind of walk up, not too close. I don't want to bump her if I did shoot her, but I'm going to walk up and just see if I can see blood. So I walked about 50 yards and I look over to my left, and she bolted a little to the left, and I just see, like, through the brush, I can see legs kicking. I'm like, all right, she's dead. Like, yeah. She's gone right there. So go back. I sit down. I'm pumped. I've got 2 deer down. One I can see. One that's just probably 15, 20 yards off. And so I give it about 30 minutes. I walk up, and I go right to where I shot her, the second deer, and she was probably 10 yards in front of the spike. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like, there's a blood trail, right? Perfect. By the way, every hunter's dream, shoot a deer when there's a white tile floor.
Yeah, bright red lung blood on white snow.
Like, that's perfect.
We're so used to hunting in like dusty Texas where there can be blood, like so much blood, but it just gets like soaked up. You don't see any of it.
So I'm looking to my left. I'm like, man, there's a really good looking blood trail there. So I went and I looked at that first deer I shot. I'm like, okay, great. It was a great shot. I actually put it right through the shoulder, right through the heart, both lungs. Smoked him, like just absolutely smoked him, which is always a good feeling when it's your first rifle kill of the season.
Upon dissection later, I fished out the heart just to see what was going on because recently I don't know, I like deer heart now, so I dug in there. You like basically split it in half.
Yeah,
like right down the middle.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a good feeling because this is the funny story is this 270. Like, the only 2 kills I've had this season was a pig and that doe down in Laguna, and they were both with a bow. So I haven't shot anything except for a skunk that I shot in the head. from about 50 yards, which was great. I buried him. He didn't move. I shot him. He just kind of cratered, which is cool. But other than that, I haven't shot, and I haven't taken it to the range in 2 years. So I'm like, man, I hope this thing's on. And I shot that first deer. I'm like, okay, it's on. And I shot the second deer and it ran. I'm like, And then I saw the blood trail. I'm like, nah, it's on.
Yeah.
So I ended up going back to the camper. Didn't grab the deer. Just waiting. Pliny finished his sit. Went and got him in the truck. We drove over.
Well, you're like, I'll come get you, but I'm like, yeah, I'm like 50 yards up here, but
sure.
Okay. And then you drove past me.
I drove right by you. I'm like, where the hell is he? I see you coming from behind me. I'm like, why are you back there? The stand's over that way. So we found both deer, put them in the back of the truck, brought them out to the corner of the property, skinned them, quartered them, took the back straps. The cool thing is, even the shoulder on the bigger deer wasn't too jacked up. We got most of the meat on it. Got one of the hearts out of the little deer, which is cool. But my biggest
one of the hearts.
Yeah, the other one was there was no getting it.
Yeah.
So the cool thing for me in all of this was my goal was to get meat in the cooler, and I got a lot of meat in the cooler, which is super exciting. The second thing is I've never shot 2 deer in one day. I've actually never shot 2 deer in one season. And so I've shot 3 deer this season now and 2 in one day.
Okay, cool.
Which is kind of cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Lots of firsts.
So there's a lot of firsts. It was kind of fun. I had 2 really good shots. So all in all, I mean, I think this property is really great. It's beautiful out here. We're going to put up a couple cameras tomorrow, see what we can see over the next couple of months. But overall, I mean, I couldn't be more excited about what we were able to get out of this so far.
Some interesting notes from just kind of processing, cleaning those deer. So we didn't hang them. So a lot of times we hang them. I know a lot of people up north hang them head up, which I still think is super weird. I normally hang them head down, but we didn't have any place to hang them. But we're like, we do gutless most of the time anyway. So we just did it on your tailgate, and it worked out great. And it was literally like, it felt like it was just kind of like, I don't know, like a dissection class in school or something. It was like, you take the one on the left, I take the one on the right. Okay, now we do this step. Now we do the, and so we just kind of stayed on pace and we worked through both deer kind of at the same time.
Yeah, and a note on that. So by the way, Pliny's taught me pretty much everything I know about hunting so far, including how to do the gutless method. But for most of the animals that we've cleaned, well, actually now it's probably 50-50 after these 2. They've all been hanging. So basically from back legs up, head down. And so, you basically take the shoulders off, you take the back straps off, and then you take the hips last after you take the tenderloins, all that kind of stuff. So the first animal that we've actually ever done without hanging was 3 months ago. That sow I shot with a bow. Yeah. That was the first one we did on the ground.
And we could have hung it, but it was like, let's do it on the ground.
Yep.
Just see what it's like.
Because we're going to Laguna in a week.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. So we did that. Then the second one was that doe in Laguna that I shot.
Yep.
And then these 2.
Yep. And
so these were literally the 3rd and 4th deer that I've ever cleaned, or animals that I've cleaned on the ground. And so it's cool. I mean, it was on a tailgate, but it was cool to be like, all right, so I know how it's supposed to look when it's hanging upside down. Oh, okay, there's that bone. Right? So it was kind of cool. Pliny was like, all right, go here. And I'm watching, and man, we were pretty efficient with it and I think we got a pretty good amount of the meat off. I don't think we left much on there.
We got the heart out of one. We got both tenders on both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a fun experience for sure.
And then it was something that I think is interesting. So a lot of times, like when I go down to my lease, I've got loppers stashed down there. So usually I use loppers to cut the joints, cut the lower half of the leg off, but we didn't have that. So what I've done before is I just have like a K-bar in my truck toolbox, and I've just basically used that and just like bashed the leg. Because it's, man, like a combat knife. It's kind of scary and wild, like how powerful you can get with just a combat knife. And just crushed through the leg. And then I borrowed Daniel's knife, and then I looked at the blade after I was hacking bones, and it was just like, your buck knife's a bit serrated.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, you went straight Viking on that. I'm like, yeah, well, it works.
And then after that, he cut off the head and held it up.
Skull. But then, what I thought was cool, it was my first time actually, I've hunted in the snow a decent amount and like coyote hunted and stuff, but it was my first time processing deer in the snow. And so like, as we got all the quarters done, we kind of stacked them up, and then kind of at the end, we just threw them in the snow.
Yep. Let them cool down.
Yeah, before we locked them up in the ice, because we realized if we put them in the ice chest with no ice, it's just going to trap the heat in.
Yep.
So let's get them as cold as possible right now, then put them all up in there.
Yep.
I thought that was kind of cool.
I thought it was a great call.
I had never done that before.
Yeah, so we put them out there, came back, drank a beer, made some chili dinner, and then went back.
Fantastic venison chili.
Good. Yeah, it was good. Thank you, babe. That was my wife that helped make that.
And I am, we discussed this earlier, I am pro beans and chili, but also my chili never has beef. It's always venison.
Always
You just have to.
It's got to be.
Yep.
Yeah. So we went back, put them in the cooler, and now we're back here recording this, drinking a beer, and looking forward to see what we can do tomorrow.
Yeah, we set the other beers outside while we're recording this, so hopefully they're nice and very cold now.
Yeah.
I think game plan for tomorrow. So I don't know. There's a chance that I'll wuss out and want to go back in that blind with that heater because that was pretty nice. Like I'm leaving that on the table. But otherwise, we might go hike up to that mesa again with our long range precision setups, just so we can see everything.
Yeah.
And just if there's something, why not take
Let
a
it
stab
fly.
at it? And then
So if you see a doe, let's say a decent sized 90-pound doe from 600 yards, you taking the shot?
dude, 600 makes me nervous.
So, by the way, I've already told Pliny, because I've got 2 deer in the cooler now, that he's got first right of refusal on anything we see. Pig, javelina, coyote, deer. So if he says no to 600, I'll probably say no too. That's a long
600 is a long way.
What if
out
there's
there
no
on the-
wind?
That changes things.
A lot.
That's in the realm of like, if I feel like I'm really steady and I've got a lot of time and I can see the full animal, there's a possibility there. But if I don't have all those things, I'm probably not taking a 6. But 4 or 5 is in my zone, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a 6.5 Creedmoor, so pretty accurate, but it doesn't have a ton of energy out there. I mean, enough to kill a small West Texas whitetail, but not a lot to spare.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. Then we're going to set up those cameras, and we've got some protein blocks, and this is kind of so a lot of people scout like in the summer, but our plan is as soon as season ends, let's lay bait and cameras then, so we have literally as much time before next season as possible to learn about this place.
Yep.
So we'll either learn, hey, this is what's here, this is what we can expect, or we'll know way ahead of time, not worth it.
Yeah.
Or
we're happy we got those 2 deer off there.
or it's only worth it to come out here for a last minute Hail Mary sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that's generally the plan for tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a good couple of days, and again, it's always great to get out of the city and into the country. And in this case, I was really fortunate and blessed to be able to take a couple shots on animals.
And one thing on that I want to throw in real quick. So a lesson that I think a lot of people can learn from and take away that you did a very good job of is just know what your hit list and what your do's and do nots are well before you're looking at an animal in the scope. In this case, it was an anything goes.
Yep.
And for me, it wasn't.
Yep.
Because I think it was probably the same deer that I passed that you shot. And so then we swapped places, and the plan worked perfectly.
Yep.
And so just the idea that, like, don't be looking at a deer thinking about it.
Yeah.
And getting nervous and wondering, and like, you were just so prepared what you were going to shoot. So when it stepped out, you're like, got it, done. Boom.
Yeah.
So well done on that. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people can probably learn from that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I came into it knowing exactly what I would do in a situation, so that when I got on it, I would not have to think about what should I do in this situation. It was, again, on in a lot of different scenarios, on a lot of different properties, I probably wouldn't have shot either of those deer. But with this scenario, this property, and everything that went into it, I was like, no, those types of deer that come out, I'm going to shoot them. And as soon as I saw them on my rifle scope, I literally saw them in my rifle scope, each of them, for less than 10 seconds, probably less than 5 before I took a shot.
Dang. Nice.
I was on them and shot.
Johnny on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a fun trip. It's been cold, but we've been handling it pretty well, I think. It's been successful, and it's been fun.
Yeah.
So wish us luck tomorrow. Hopefully we get something done. To everybody out there listening, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
It's 2021 now.
Yeah.
And until next time, stay safe, be free, and never stop seeking adventure.